You know that everything changed for the better in my relationship when we got serious about our attachment styles. Once we finally started taking accountability for the unintentionally hurtful or harmful ways that we were showing up, everything shifted in a way that we hadn't experienced before. Playfulness and connection came back into our relationship, and conflict became easier to navigate. It turned out relationships aren't all that complicated. We just didn't know the formula. So that's what I want to share with you today. And if you're watching this, there are probably only two possibilities. One, you're in a relationship with someone who you perceive as distant, detached from their feelings. Maybe they have some intimacy or commitment issues in your opinion. And you want nothing more than to figure out how to reach them and feel more connected with them. Or two, someone sent you this video because, well, you're that partner that I just described. And they're simply hoping that you'll listen to what I have to say, and maybe it will help your relationship in some way. And I get it if you're a little bit triggered by someone sending you this. It's easy to think, well, they wouldn't send me this unless they thought there was something wrong with me. I mean, they wouldn't send this unless they thought I was flawed in some way, which means they don't even really accept me as a person, which of course makes me want to just run away and distance myself from all this. Or you're thinking, once again, I'm being made out to be the enemy. I'm made out to be the bad partner who needs to change, which understandably makes you want to distance yourself from all this. So I just want to reassure you, if you've made it this far, I'm not labeling you as the enemy. The truth is, I hope you're watching this with your partner, because I'm going to pick on them just as much as I pick on you. I want the same thing that you want. You both wouldn't be watching this unless you wanted a successful relationship together. You want connection and playfulness and low conflict. My job is to teach you what those require from both of you. For most people who are avoidantly attached, you had parents or caregivers that were inconsistent with love and affection and acceptance at best, or straight up neglectful and critical and unsafe at worst. And you learned early on, what's the point of trusting or relying on anyone? Because the people who were supposed to be there for me the most only let me down. What's the point in feeling sad or angry or scared or worried? Nobody cares, right? Feelings serve no purpose. Just ask yourself, if you remember a time when you were sad or lonely or felt anything as a child, who was there to listen and move towards you with warmth and understanding? Who was there to say the words, I'm here for you. What you're feeling makes sense, and we can get through this together. Because if the answer is no one, then it makes sense that slowly but surely your brain, in a genius move to help protect you from those uncomfortable feelings, started to turn them off or numb them in a way. But here's the problem. You're not a kid anymore. And now you want a healthy relationship with another person, and you don't realize it, but that's a problem because you don't even know what a healthy relationship is. The truth that you know deep inside of yourself but may have forgotten is that you don't trust people. You don't trust them not to hurt you. You don't trust that they're not going to hurt you just like everyone else in your life has. You don't trust them when they say they love you, even if you want to. You might have some fears and core beliefs that you're not even aware of. You might believe that maybe people neglected me earlier in my life because I'm just not lovable. I'm not worthy of love. And it's smarter to always protect myself, always keep my walls up, always keep my armor on. That way I can stay safe and never have to feel those terrible feelings of loneliness or sadness again. But the problem with that is that you can't have a healthy relationship and always have your armor up. It makes sense you want to protect your heart. You've got good reason for that. You think, well, if I let my armor down, then I'm exposed, I'm vulnerable, and there's nothing stopping them from hurting me. That's just not a risk I'm willing to take. But there's also a risk to numbing your feelings your whole life. I mean, those feelings don't go away just because you get really good at suppressing them. They still come out in other ways, like anxiety or rage or alcoholism or addiction or depression or autoimmune issues. And we can spend our whole life trying to mask pain that we don't even know is there. We've avoided it our whole life. It's like the pebble in your shoe that used to hurt really bad, but you simply got used to the pain. And now it's just the baseline. It makes sense that you don't see the value in vulnerability or deep connections. It makes sense that you struggle seeing the importance of recognizing feelings in yourself or in others. That's why it's so easy to dismiss and invalidate other people. It's because that's exactly how you deal with your own emotions, right? That's the only way you know how to temporarily get rid of that pain. It makes sense that you're success-driven. I mean, you're extremely successful at your job or hobbies, aren't you? Of course you are, because one, that was a way for you to prove that you were worthy to be seen as valuable by your initial caregivers. You felt like you had to earn their love, so you studied harder, you practiced more than the other kids, so you'd finally get at least some of mom or dad's attention or admiration. Or two, you're so successful at your job because that's where you feel the most competent. You feel like you get it right there. And we always gravitate to the areas where we feel most competent. But it's the opposite in relationships, isn't it? People keep telling you that you're not measuring up in some way, and that feels awful. One of the worst things in the world for someone with avoidant attachment to hear is that they're failing. It's just too close to our identity. So many people with avoidant attachment already feel like they're a failure baseline. They feel like they're one step away from being labeled as a failure. And I'm just here to remind you, you're not a failure. And I know you hate hearing all this emotional stuff, but I need you to know that they don't get to define you anymore. Whatever you went through, and I bet it was a lot, don't downplay it and tell me that other people have been through worse. Because trauma is trauma. And you're used to minimizing it. You're used to moving past it. What you're not used to is someone acknowledging it and you sitting in that discomfort of actually feeling it. And I'm certainly not telling you that you need to process all that now, but you do need to acknowledge that something wasn't right with your childhood. And you might look back and think, it wasn't that bad. Or you might not even be able to remember much at all. Because it's really common that when a child is dealing with trauma and doesn't know how to cope, they forget. Their brain kind of turns those memories off. That's why you might not have a lot of memories from your childhood. But if you dealt with an absent father, maybe he was absent physically or just emotionally. If you dealt with an angry or critical mother, nothing you did was ever good enough. She always blamed you for her own anger. If you dealt with alcoholism or abuse of any kind, it's time you start acknowledging that. If I told you that everything that happened to you as a child would happen to your future children, and that causes you to immediately go, oh no, I would never want that for them, then you have to start acknowledging that. It doesn't mean you hate your parents or that you're blaming them. It's simply admitting that certain aspects of how you were raised were unfair or hurtful for you. And the trauma you experienced in the past isn't your fault. But healing from it and not letting it sabotage your future relationships is your responsibility.